On the arsenal, I got artillery, lyrics and ammo.
Well, welcome everybody to the special edition of Just Chillin'.
Fast up in the ricochet, ready aim at the brain and what the trigger say. Tempos trifle,
Particular program. Adolescent drug abuse, what parents should know, what parents should do. We're going to talk about that. We're going to focus on that. I want to start out with giving some of the realities, some of the unfortunate statistics, if I can get my notes out here, regarding alcohol and other drug use. As you see, we have a guest in studio who is an author, who authored a book that we're going to be talking about, and also an expertise. LSD is now marketed to younger children with colorful designs of cartoon characters. Needles are no longer the determinant to heroin use. Today's drugs, heroin particularly, is such a concentration of purity that you can snort it and get high. Adolescents are stealing drugs from family medicine cabinets, selling them. Alcohol continues to be the #1 most abused drug by adolescents. Younger and younger kids are using. We're seeing a growing problem. I could go on and on for the whole program. I'm not going to do that. My guest on the program, this program of Just Chillin', is Nikki Babbitt, Dr. Nikki Babbitt. I'll read what I've got down here to let you know Nikki a little better. Dr. Babbitt is a mother of a recovering son. She has spent the last 35 years counseling adolescents and families, first as a high school teacher, then as a high school psychologist, an adolescent and family therapist. She was the director of an alcoholism and drug addiction treatment program for teens. And I'll just mention that that was New Directions, which some of our viewers and listeners may be familiar with. She's been a guest speaker at conferences throughout the United States and in Russia, and is a consultant to schools, juvenile justice facilities, and youth-serving agencies. Nikki, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Adolescent alcohol and other drug use. Kind of give us an overview. I talked about some of the general stats, but in your words, give us a picture. Is it getting better? Is it worse as we look over the last 20, 30 years?
Well, I think what has gotten worse is the availability of drugs that were really not around when, for example, parents were growing up. And parents may look the other way because they think, oh, well, we had marijuana when we were young, or we had LSD, and what's the big deal? If
we got through it, our kids will get through it. But one of the things that was mentioned, and you certainly point out in your book, is the fact that today's drugs are not the same drugs of 20, 30 years ago. The concept, well, I'll let you answer that. What about marijuana? What about heroin? What about crack cocaine?
Well, I think for marijuana, for example, a common way of using marijuana today is to take cigars and hollow them out and put the marijuana inside. And cigar leaves don't breathe like cigarette papers, so that the intensity of the marijuana is greater. Also, kids tend to dip the marijuana into other substances that are very dangerous, like ecstasy, PCP, things that are going to cause a high that's very different from the marijuana that was smoked in the 60s.
Right, a very unpredictable combination when mixing drugs. Plus, the marijuana itself today has a higher concentration of the delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, or the THC, right? So for those who may be viewing or listening to the program who dabbled in marijuana 25, 30 years ago, today's marijuana is a higher concentration, therefore more potent. We didn't have crack cocaine 30 years ago, did we?
Exactly, and so that's obviously very dangerous. Another thing that's dangerous is alcohol. As we have seen in the newspaper, there have been stories within the last few weeks of ecstasy being added to alcohol, where kids will, let's say, go to a party and somebody has added ecstasy, which you can't taste. And in Akron, actually, I think several weeks ago, a girl died as a result of that, her boyfriend had just put it in her drink.
And that has been something in the news recently. As a matter of fact, I brought information that appeared in the newsletter, the Alcohol and Drug Addiction Services Board newsletter, Community Alert. And we're going to talk a little bit after our break about ecstasy and some of the date rape drugs, Rohypnol, just to make people aware. Nikki, you recently authored a book entitled Adolescent Drug and Alcohol Abuse, How to Spot It, How to Stop It, and Get Help for Your Family. That's written for parents? Okay. I'm going to ask you a real basic question. How come? Why?
Well, I was very motivated because I work with parents who have kids that are alcoholics and addicts, and they wish that they had had a book so that when they began to suspect this might be a problem for their child, they would have a resource to turn to in terms of what to notice and what to do.
How to spot it, stop it, intervene on it. What makes your book different than some that have been out there or some of the pamphlets or publications?
The major difference is the extensive use of interviews of parents as well as teachers, guidance counselors, treatment professionals, but predominantly parents, as well as not only interviews of what happened but also how they felt in terms of this whole problem as it was developing.
One of the unfortunate realities of this program, and always it goes so quick because there's so much we want to say. Let me get right to some of the basics that are mentioned here in the title: how to spot it, how to stop it, get help for your family. Let's begin there. How does a parent, and we have parents viewing the program, listening to the program right now, what are some of the general red flags that they need to be aware of that may suggest that their son or daughter, or I guess the reality today, grandparents, their grandson, granddaughter, may be involved with alcohol or other drugs?
If they start seeing behavioral changes in terms of school grades are falling, they're going around with different friends, their physical appearance is changing, they're missing curfew or violating other home rules, they're more defiant at home. Those are some of the things that can point out the problem, although sometimes parents will say, well, my kid doesn't have those things, and we call maybe some kids what we call are high functioning. They're very active in school, but the parents suspect that they are using drugs and alcohol, let's say binge drinking on weekends. So if parents have questions basically about their teenagers, they need to consider ruling out drugs and alcohol.
Right. And that's an important thing to say, well, it may not be the case, but let's at least rule it out. It's moved us a step closer to what the possibility is. And I guess I'm speaking from having a couple adolescents dealing with that whole teenage issues as they come up, a son and a daughter. We as parents have this built-in kind of denial, don't we? That you want to believe that they're not doing it. You want to believe that they're oh, this isn't mine, I'm holding it for a friend, or I found this, or it just appeared magically, is true. How do you advise parents to get around that? What do you say to the parents who are in their denial stage about what might be happening with their adolescent?
Well, my general feeling is that most kids do experiment with drugs and alcohol. It's very much a part of adolescent culture. And some of the studies that you read, I think, tend to be low. Parents think, oh, it's not 100%. I tend to think it is about 99% by the time a kid gets out of high school. If they haven't had a sip of a drink or maybe a puff of marijuana just to try it out, they're very unusual. And parents need to know that out of that experimentation, 10 to 15% of kids get hooked. And their particular child might be one of those kids.
And a large percentage of that 10 to 15% are those who have that genetic predisposition.
Yes.
If it runs in your family, you need to be doubly concerned or more aware of the fact that your son or daughter is about 4 times greater risk for becoming alcoholic, chemically dependent, because there certainly is a proven genetic connection, predisposition. And as far as the statistics, they're using the things I see, and I have the Keeping Score publication here. We're talking about, by the time a kid is a senior in high school, well over half, and some studies say at least 90%, have used at least 1 or more times alcohol or some other drug. We also know that kids are using younger and younger, and maybe we can touch on that. How come? Why are we seeing, and it's not unusual to have a young person say, I started at 10 years old, at 9 years old, whereas I know when I first got involved in counseling, that would be a shock, or what? You know. How come today they're using younger?
I think it's cool. You know, they see older kids using it. Similarly, high school kids see adults. You know, they see it's very much a part of our culture as adults, that using is a way to have fun and all this. And it's just a matter of kids are younger and look up, see these others. So it's a way to look grown up.
One of the things that the Keeping Score publication, I don't know if Chris can get in on the cover a little bit, but the Keeping Score, that's great. Keeping Score publication talks about, and this is a real good general overview, Drug Strategies puts this out, Columbia University. The whole reality that today's environment for using drugs, today's marketing and selling of tobacco and alcohol is more sophisticated than ever before. I grew up watching a Chesterfield a cigarette pack dance across the stage, you know. A little guy called for Philip Morris. Fred Flintstone used to smoke. Those were okay for their day. Today's messages are even more sophisticated. One of the other things that this points out, it talks about parents' awareness of their child's use. They ask parents, they ask kids, are you doing it? They ask parents, do you think your kid is doing it? And the difference was phenomenal. Several percentage points difference. Parents, I think as low as 4% said, yeah, I think my son or daughter might be doing it. 60-some% of the kids said they were. Why the gap in that?
Well, I think, as you pointed out earlier, parents want to believe that their child is not involved. And also, the kids who are heavily involved don't want their parents to know about it. So they will be especially charming and argumentative and say things like, well, gee, Mom, do you think I'd be that stupid? And actually, I compliment parents by telling them that the smarter you are, actually the harder the kids have to try, and the kids will try very hard to make sure that you don't find out.
Let me give you a true or false question. If your son or daughter is using it, means you failed as a parent?
Absolutely not. I think this is definitely something that parents do think about, and is very unfair, because it definitely is not the parents' fault. We know for a fact through studies of twins and other genetic studies that people who can experiment with drugs and alcohol and become social drinkers are certainly out there, but a certain percent will just get hooked. And it doesn't matter what kind of parents you had, or whether you went to church every week, or what school district you live in. Income? Exactly. None of those factors. It's really related to a genetic brain situation that, so it's very, very helpful if parents do automatically think that my kid could be one of those kids.
Give you another, we're moving close to the break, give you another true or false. Alcohol and other drug problems, certainly as it affects youth, is more an inner-city urban problem that involves minority, not white, suburban, upper middle class folks.
No, that's definitely another myth. Absolutely not, I would say. This goes across economic levels. It's in suburban schools as well as inner city schools. There's plenty of inner city kids who are not alcoholics and addicts as well. And I think there are certain stereotypes that are unfortunate, because it helps parents with their denial.
Right. And we're going to continue to deal with some of those stereotypes. Again, I'm talking with Dr. Nikki Babbitt, who authored the book, Adolescent Drug and Alcohol Abuse, How to Spot It, How to Stop It, and How to Get Help for Your Family. And if you're tuned in, then you're learning some of those things. And we're going to talk about after the break, get into that second half, how to stop it, and also some ways of intervening and getting help. But as we always do here mid-program, we take our musical break, and here's one that some of the old-timers out there ought to recognize. Scratch My Back by Otis Redding.
I'm rich and